of my series Journey to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Okay, I just really wanted to rewatch all the Jurassic Park movies, talk about them a little bit on my channel, since I love the original Jurassic Park film, as I talked about last week, and I just have a ton of fun with Jurassic World. It's a junk food movie for me. It's a Taco Bell movie. So, in preparation for the new one, I thought, hey, let's watch all of them and talk about them on my channel, give my definitive thoughts on this series that I've been watching for 25 years now. As we dive into Jurassic Park The Lost World today, go ahead and give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's a worthy sequel? Do you think it's an unworthy, very disappointing sequel? What do you think about it as a Steven Spielberg film? All that fun stuff. Tell me down below in the comment section. Also, if you've read the book, kind of give your thoughts on how it was adapted, all that kind of fun stuff. Also, as we go into this will be a spoiler review as the movie is over 20 years old. So if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it, then come back and join the conversation over here. As I dive into it, it's going to be like one of my normal reviews. I'm going to talk about the good, I'm going to talk about the bad, give you my score on it, and then I'm going to talk about the relation to the book and the movie. But since the movie and the book are very different from one another, it's more like I'm just going to summarize the book and tell you the few places where they're similar. With that said, let's go ahead and get started talking about the good. And the absolute best thing about this movie is that Steven Spielberg knows how to direct action, he knows how to set up special effects, and he knows how to create suspense and tension in a movie. So this is just jam-packed with these suspenseful sequences. One early on in the movie involves a trailer going off of a cliff, and it just finds every little way to make you nervous and feel like, oh, this is gonna go bad. Oh, this isn't good. And it doesn't just, you don't just have that feeling, it visualizes the tension and the urgency. So part of it is Julianne Moore falls down through the trailer as it's dangling over the cliff and she lands on glass. And so right off the bat, that's like, ooh, this isn't good. And then it visualizes as the glass starts to splinter out and you're just, this isn't good. And they're in a trailer that's fallen over like this. And so you just know things are falling and things are going to go really, really bad. And it just creates this sense of suspense throughout the entire sequence. And then as someone comes to save the day, you feel the danger for the person rescuing them, for the people in the vehicle. He knows how to craft these sequences. Other times in the movies, there's people on the run from T-Rexes, from velociraptors, and he just finds all the right little ways to show velociraptors running through fields. And you don't see the velociraptors, you just see the field stuff falling over. It goes along, very much borrowing from his tactics he used for the Jaws movie of sometimes it's more terrifying when you can't see the threat coming. And he works all of this throughout the entire movie of knowing exactly how to make you afraid for these characters, hint at the danger that's coming, and then knowing exactly when to and not to show you things to elicit the right sense of excitement, thrills, suspense in each of these sequences. It's also a movie that moves very quickly. I didn't check the runtime before doing this video, but like it has about 30 minutes of setup where we get our characters to the island, establish the island, what's kind of going on, and then it gets going. Something goes on, or Vince Vaughn vandalizes the second team that are on the island. They try to rescue a T-Rex, and then basically from there until the credits roll, something's going wrong. Some dinosaurs showing up. Someone's wandering off the path. They are on the run for the rest of the movie with insane dinosaur action going on from there. So it makes it move really quick. Every time I watch this movie, I think, oh, there's going to be a little bit longer. And it's like, nope, we're to San Diego and we're about to get a T-Rex going wild in our big King Kong finale here. And so it's a quick moving movie. It doesn't get boring. It doesn't slow down. It just keeps on going. Also, as I mentioned a little bit before, but you got great special effects once again. I don't know that it's quite as good as the original Jurassic Park that I think just has such a great balance of CGI and practical. And it's one of those movies that just perfectly knew how to balance all the things that were there. This movie, it feels a little bit more like they felt enabled by the previous movie. They felt empowered to be able to pull off the CGI. So there's a few more shots in this one, I think, that are a bit more dated and feel a little bit more like I'm looking at a special effect rather than just being sucked into this world and this island of dinosaurs. And so just in general, there's a few things like that. But it holds up great compared to almost every other movie from that time period. Even in some ways compared to Jurassic World, this one still looks better because they didn't go full on out with the CGI. Another thing is that this movie stars Jeff Goldblum. I love Jeff Goldblum, so a Jurassic Park movie that puts the spotlight on Jeff Goldblum means you get all kinds of great Jeff Goldblum-isms. The sense of humor, the sarcasm, the just like perfectly timed, weirdly paced and weird cadence to his speech. You get all of that, and this is like full Goldblum here. This is like coming after Jurassic Park, after Independence Day, the peak of his kind of stardom and people my age loving him, and they put him in here, so it's the full Goldblum all on display. Goldblumism sliders pushed up to 11. So much kind of fun in his unique personality and screen presence in this movie. And beyond just Jeff Goldblum, you've got a lot of great cast in here with Julianne Moore, a young Vince Vaughn in it. So a solid cast. Everyone can kind of pull their weight in this movie. And finally, it's a movie that's very slick. I mean, it's a Steven Spielberg movie at the height of Steven Spielberg power and fame in Hollywood. So it's a very well-produced movie. Things look good. It's all professional in the way things play out. But from there, let's move on to the bad. And unfortunately for this movie, it's mostly bad. It's a tough one because it's not like it's an awful movie, but I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the bad. And a lot of that comes down to the simple fact that it's coming off Jurassic Park, which, I gave it an A plus 10 out of 10. That's, I've given less than 5 movies on my channel that high of praise in my actual review. So I love the original. Steven Spielberg, for my money, is the greatest filmmaker of all time. This is his sweet spot. And so as I dive into it and I'm more critical, it's from that context of it's the follow-up to a movie that I think is almost perfect and trying to be the movie it's trying to be, besides a few technical issues and continuity mistakes in it. And it's coming from the greatest of all time. That's the context of where I'm going to be pretty negative on this movie. And where the big problems kind of come in with this movie is with the story and with the characters. It delivers on the thrills, the action, the special effects, which is a gigantic part of what you go to go see these movies is, of course, the dinosaur mayhem. And it delivers on that. But on the story and characters, it's really weak. Especially when you compare it to the original Jurassic Park and have it in that context of side by side. Part of what made the original so good is it wasn't just about dinosaurs eating people at a theme park that goes bad. It's a movie that explores ideas of what if you did bring dinosaurs back? What would be the different way that different humans would respond to that, different characters would respond to that. So everyone in the movie represents a different perspective on a park with dinosaurs in it. And just the basic setup in these characters for the movie, the simple setup of what if there was a park with dinosaurs and things went bad and the fences turned off, that's an interesting concept. But as we go into this movie, they didn't find a way to replace all the characters that didn't return with equally interesting characters, and the setup isn't as interesting. The movie tries to work in some ideas about preservation and research, but it's so underdeveloped that you don't get any of the deeper discussions that you got in the first movie. The first movie, it takes an hour before the fences go down and chaos kind of breaks out. It's half the movie is just people sitting around talking about this world of dinosaurs, and it's all just as good as when the dinosaurs are eating people. This movie, that's not the case. It works in this about stuff about preservation and research, but it's so underdeveloped, you don't get any of this sense of awe, wonder, ideas, real sci-fi that you kind of got in the original one. So that's it. Let's dive in talking about the characters real quick, kind of walk through the different ones and why they're not as good. So kicking off, our lead character, Ian Malcolm. I think part of the problem with Ian Malcolm in this movie is that he doesn't act like Ian Malcolm. Maybe perhaps some of that is that because he's the lead, it doesn't set him up. Ian Malcolm works really well as a response character. So you put him with John Hammond, you put him with the lawyer, and they're in the amusement park, and he reacts to what he's seeing in front of them. And he can tell them all the reasons this will go bad. They're riding in the car, and he can tell these lectures to people that are our lead characters and kind of provide exposition for them. In this movie, he's our lead character that's supposed to be saving people and things like that, which isn't really who Ian Malcolm is. It feels like he's out of character, and it doesn't set him up to do the stuff that makes him interesting. He's fun and likable and watchable because he's Jeff Goldblum and has Jeff Goldblumisms, but he doesn't have the Ian Malcolm distinctives for much of the movie. That all these like monologues that he gave in the first film, most of that stuff's gone. So he's easily the most watchable and interesting character in the movie, but he's not nearly as interesting as he was in the first film. For me, the only other interesting character in the movie is the hunter Roland Tempo, and he has a great screen presence, and he's always kind of like talking down to people, giving these amazing little lectures about taking rich lawyers off on safaris and things like that. All these cool moments, but even his character feels a little bit underdeveloped by the time you get to the end of the movie, and you never feel like you fully understand why he wanted to hunt a T-Rex so much, why he's not fully satisfied when he does it. It feels underdeveloped, and as we got to the end of the movie and his companion, it doesn't make it and ends up dying. Even after, I watched it, I've seen it many times, watched it with my wife who's seen it many times, and she was actually, which person was he sad that died? Because even the person that's supposed to be his companion, that's his kind of lifeline to humanity, it's so underdeveloped that we don't, like, if you kind of forget who he's talking about. From there, I don't think really any of the rest of the characters are interesting really at all, and they don't even have much of a personality. So you got Vince Vaughn as our Greenpeace photographer who's actually there to sabotage the other team, and it's probably the least interesting performance I've seen from Vince Vaughn. It's not a bad performance, it's not bad acting, it just has the least personality of any Vince Vaughn character that I've ever seen. I really like Vince Vaughn, and whether you're talking about comedic Vince Vaughn or the movie came out last year, Brolin, Cell Block 99, I loved that movie. It was great and very different from his comedic personality while still kind of having a little bit of the Vince Vaughn in there. This movie it's just decent actor with okay character, so he's kind of forgettable, and it's hard to like the character when he's somewhat responsible for everything that happens in the movie. He's on the good team, but him sabotaging the bad team is what leads to a bunch of people dying and things going really bad, and so that's not good. And then he just disappears out of the third act of the movie. Like, she's just gone once they leave the island. You got Julianne Moore that playing Sarah, and the character's just eager science person that is a good actress and can smile and have that charming Hollywood actress kind of appeal to her. But the character herself, it doesn't have anything that makes her that interesting. Doesn't do anything that interesting. Once again, very forgettable, kind of bland character. Throw in the mix, Ian Malcolm's daughter kind of sneaks along on the trip along with them. Very weird decision. It's a mirror to a plot point that's in the book that makes a little bit more sense, but didn't make a ton of sense in the book. It's not Ian Malcolm's daughter in the book, but some like college students sneak along that are young college students. And it felt weird in the book too, but she just feels out of place, and then they have to find something for her to do, so you get the worst moment in the movie where she's swinging on bars and kicks a velociraptor outside of this shed thing. Like, strains plausibility just a little bit too much. So she's just kind of a character that doesn't feel like she belongs in the movie that we're watching. Then you've got the InGen CEO guy that's trying to start the San Diego park, that he just feels like generic stock greedy businessman that doesn't care about the consequences. He just like feels like the generic character. So doesn't really work. And then our soldier guys just have no person. They're just cannon fodder besides Peter Stormare, who one of those guys that shows up in a lot of Michael Bay movies. And so one of the actors, I like the actor. He's got a nice little presence to him. But he's the only one of these guys that has any personality. The rest are just cannon fodder designed to be eaten by dinosaurs so that we have a higher body count in the sequel. That's what it seemed like, why we have all these guys there. And so, all in all, you look at the set of characters, they don't represent a worldview. They're not very interesting. They're not very memorable. If you ask me, like, can you tell me 5 things about Sarah's personality? Could you say 5 things about Vince Vaughn's character's personality? Like, I couldn't really do it. I could give you like a couple things, but that's about it. And that's not a good sign, especially coming off the first movie where all the characters seemed so rich and memorable. and interesting, and they worked together even better and amplified everyone. So from there, we'll move on to the story, and just like the characters that aren't nearly as interesting in the first movie, our story isn't nearly as compelling this time around. And part of that is because it doesn't seem to have a clear focus. It's not entirely clear what the movie's about. So the first movie's about what if there was a theme park with dinosaurs and then it got sabotaged as the fence went down, and how would you escape? So it's very clear what the tension, what the hook is, park with dinosaurs, and then the conflict in it, don't want to get eaten by dinosaurs, so you're trying to get off the island. What is that with the movie The Lost World? Because you can kind of go through our characters and you can say, well, Sarah goes to the island because she wants to research it, but the movie's not about research. Some of the themes they talk about interference and things like that, but that's not what the movie's about. Ian Malcolm goes to the island to try and rescue her, but she doesn't want to be rescued, and that's not what the movie's about. You have the second team that goes there to try and kidnap the dinosaurs and take them to San Diego. The movie turns into that. It is about that, but it's not really fully focused on that to where our lead characters, Ian Malcolm isn't set up in the movie to try and stop them. That's not really his mission in the movie. So it's kind of like their two plot lines kind of converge with each other, but so it doesn't really feel like our main protagonist mission is not to stop the main thing that the movie's about. So it's a weird way that they interact with each other. Then you have Vince Vaughn, whose character is designed to try and stop these guys, but the movie's not really about trying to stop them. Once everything goes crazy, it's about surviving and getting off the island. But once they get off the island, the movie doesn't end. And then the end of the movie is about this new park in San Diego with a T-Rex. So it's like it feels like it's the crappy third sequel that never existed, just tacked on at the end of this movie. Like, what if they put Jurassic Park in San Diego and the T-Rex got loose? Like, it feels very odd and very tacked on to the movie, because you could see where you'd have a fairly cohesive movie if it was designed to end when they left the island. But it doesn't. It just kind of keeps on going. And that's where you kind of go, what is this movie about? Because it's not about surviving the island. It's not really about San Diego. It's just a series of reasons to get us to the island in the first 30 minutes and give all these different characters reasons to go there. And then from there, it's 90 minutes of things going bad. It's 90 minutes of reasons dinosaurs are eating people, and then it's over. But even as the movie's ending and you've got the boat going back, based on the same logic that we just had the San Diego sequence, you could add another 20-minute sequence right there. What if the T-Rex and baby T-Rex got loose again and started eating people on the ship? And you just add 20 more minutes, and then they have to get to the island. And like, you could add another sequence using the same logic, because it's just tacking on a new conflict, a new scenario, because the movie itself does not have a clear focus as to what it's trying to be and where it's going. And because of that, it turns the movie just into kind of a popcorn sci-fi movie. It takes away some of the grandeur of the original. The original one felt like it absolutely is that blockbuster, but it transcends it. It's a better version of that. And this one just feels like, yeah, it's a movie about dinosaurs eating people. It's an excuse to get people in a situation where dinosaurs will eat them. And let's find as many different places for dinosaurs to eat them. So yeah, if that's what our movie's about, let's send it to San Diego. That's a crazy, weird sequence to do. That'll be fun to see. That's what the movie feels like, unfortunately. And that's not good. And that's why it feels like such a drop off from the previous movie. But at the same time, it's frustrating because as a movie like that, it delivers what you want. It delivers all sorts of great action, thrills, excitement, suspense, urgency, momentum, all that stuff. It has all that. It just isn't tied together with a particularly fulfilling plot. And one final negative on this one that kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth every time I watch it, that it feels like this is a much meaner film. It's a much more cruel film. And what I mean by that is that I think the best picture of this is the sequence where the trailer is going off the cliff. I believe the character's name is Thorn, is trying to rescue them. He's a good guy. Oh, no, he's not evil at all. He rushes to try and save them, hooks up this Jeep to the trailer. He's desperately trying to do everything in his power to stop this trailer from going over long enough to get a rope down to them so that they can climb up and be rescued. And then 2 T-Rexes come and just eat him. And he dies trying to rescue the other people. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can play this moment in the movie. You can play it as this big heroic movie where someone sacrifices themselves to save the other people, because that's what it is. You can play it as a tragic moment where a guy's trying to save people and gets eaten, and so then it's like, oh, this is really sad. The way the movie chooses to play it is it plays it as, hey, let's show how playful the T-Rexes can be. And so he gets bitten, pulled out, and then the other T-Rex pulls starts pulling like limbs and arms off of him out of the other one's mouth. And so you're just watching it like, it's kind of off-putting to watch. And you're like, oh, I don't want to watch that guy die such a humiliating death where she's being torn to pieces like that. And that's what they chose to do with a good character. And it's not that, I don't know that I would have had the character die, but sometimes you have to have good guys die to have a movie have stakes and for you to really care. So it doesn't really bother me that he died, but the way the movie's played out, it really acknowledge that he just saved these people. It's not played heroic. It's not played as a sacrifice or something happens to where it's played in such a way that just feels kind of mean and cruel. And then it's the way the rest of the movie plays out. It involves a sequence where a little girl is attacked by guppies. You have one of the soldiers, the Peter Stormare character, torturing the guppies at point in time in the movie. You have guys get smashed in the foot and those sticks to the foot, which is I would love that scene if perhaps there wasn't some of the other stuff that felt a little bit nasty. When the T-Rex kind of goes wild on the city, you have civilians kind of getting eaten, and it just a little bit off-putting. Like it doesn't feel like it quite fits with what we got in the first movie, and so I like the carnage, I like the violence, but the flavor of it, the way it was spiced, didn't feel quite right to me. So as I alluded to before, this one's a little bit tough to score for me because it delivers on the thrills, the excitement, the special effects. It is slick, it is well made in those regards, but then on all those kind of other story, character levels that make you actually care about the carnage that we're seeing, it kind of fails on those levels. Overall, I'd give this movie a C+. In general, I wouldn't really recommend it, but I only slightly don't recommend it. But on an entertainment level, I'd give it a 6.5, which means I just slightly recommend it if you're into dinosaur carnage chaos. But I would say that there's better movies to watch even if you just want that sort of thing. So I only slightly recommend it on an entertainment level. Like for me personally, I've watched the original Jurassic Park countless times. I mean, it's a movie I watch every single year. When it was re-released in 3D a few years back, my wife and I went to go see it, rushed to go see it in the theater. If they showed it at one of our local theaters, because a lot of our local theaters show movies like this, we would rush to go see it. Lost World, there's not very many times where I'm like, I could watch Jurassic Park for the 57th time, or I could watch The Lost World for the 7th time, or however many times I've seen it. And I would just always go with Jurassic Park. And then a few years back, Jurassic World comes out. And if I just want schlocky dinosaur eating people action, I'd prefer to go with Jurassic World. If I want something meatier, Jurassic Park. If I want fluffy junk food, I would go with Jurassic World. So this movie just doesn't have a place for me, even though it's not horribly made. It just doesn't have something that draws me to it. With that said, I'm going to dive into talking about the book, The Lost World, how it compares to the movie. So if you plan on reading the book, you might want to skip over most of what I'm about to say. I'll give kind of a quick summary of it that won't spoil things, and then I'll kind of walk you through it generally speaking, how it works for you guys if you're not planning on reading the book. So in general, the book, much like the movie, is a gigantic step down from the original book. It's not nearly as good, and I wouldn't recommend it. Unless you're a completist, you're curious, check it out. But I don't think it's very good. The book, Jurassic Park, is great. The movie, Jurassic Park, is great. And then with both of the sequels, they're even for different reasons, gigantic steps down with enormous story problems. Ian Malcolm acting out of character for different reasons in both of them, and characters that aren't nearly as compelling as the characters that are in the book. But what's interesting is that, for the most part, the story is entirely different. The plot line, in general, spoiler-free version of it, the book is that basically no one knows where the Lost World is. InGen has gone bankrupt. They haven't told anyone. So the island is kind of abandoned. It's out there. And like the InGen people aren't even talking about it. Ian Malcolm, through this other scientist guy that confronts him, they're looking for it, as well as Dodgson, the guy that hired Dennis Nedry in the first book and the first movie. he's the main villain. He's like this major character in it, and he's trying to find the island because he wants to continue what he was trying to do with Dennis Nedry. He still wants dinosaur DNA to make his own business out of it, not have to do the research. So basically the book is kind of this journey to get to the island, and it starts off somewhat in the same regards of someone goes there, gets stuck on the island, or the scientist guy goes there, gets stuck, and Ian Malcolm goes to go rescue him, and then the second team is going, but the second team's not like this big army of people, it's just a few people, and they're going there, and so then the book is about trying to get dinosaur eggs and not get dinosaur eggs and things going bad, but there's actually a lot less plot in the book than there is in the movie. Like, it's a very stretched out plot. There's not a lot happens in it. There's not even a lot more than what I just mentioned. And then there's no San Diego stuff at the end. It's all on the island and not very good. Like the trailer sequence in the movie, that's basically the climax of the book. So if you plan on reading the book, you can skip what I'm about to say, or I guess finish watching this video right now. There's not a whole lot more beyond that to spoil. The Sarah character in it, once again, is kind of a love interest with Ian Malcolm. She actually comes to the island late after Ian Malcolm, like, she's off in Africa when Ian goes to the island to try and save the doctor guy. And when she's trying to go to the island, just by chance, she ends up riding with Dodgson and his crew of like 3 people to try and go to the island. And then Dodgson, who's like a legitimate villain, attempts to kill her by pushing her overboard as they're approaching the island. Once they get to the island, Dodgson is trying to get eggs and things like that, so he's taking them from the nests, and we kind of learn through the book that the dinosaurs are very protective of their offspring and this of that nature. And so in like a rescue attempt from Ian and his crew of people, they end up taking a T-Rex that has a broken leg because of what Dodgson was doing. They take it back to the trailer because of this, and when during the rescue attempt, like everything goes crazy. Dodgson and his crew all kind of get killed, other than Dodgson, who is kept alive really just so that he can be killed at the end of the book. Like, there's not, he doesn't have a function after he gets to the island, goes to try to steal these eggs, and then basically disappears for, a third of the book, and then shows up in the last little bit, basically to just kind of have this, aha, you got eaten type moment. But so then they take this T-Rex back to the trailer to try and fix its leg, and you see this in the movie. It plays out totally different set of scenarios, but they're trying to fix its leg and trying to find a way that it can have a cast that will fall off as it grows. And after they do this, the T-Rexes basically come and attack to get their baby back, and then they get their baby back, and they're not attacking the trailer after that to get revenge. They're attacking it because their child is there. They now consider this their territory, and there's outsiders in their territory. And so it's a little bit more interesting the way that plays out, because books can give you a little bit more detail. But when the trailer gets attacked, Ian Malcolm gets injured in his leg again. And so he's kind of sidelined for the rest of the movie. Like, they're just kind of dragging him around for the rest of the movie, which is like a really lazy copy of what happened in the first one. And so he's on all sorts of morphine and drugs. And so he starts doing these Ian Malcolm style rants about chaos theory and things like that have a little bit of the flavor of the first one. But it's like, why are we rehashing what was in the first one? Like, we already did this. We already had Ian Malcolm injured. Like, why did you make him the lead character if he's just going to get injured again? So it's very weird. Oh, I mentioned before that the daughter who stows away has counterparts in the book. And in the book, it's the scientist professor guy that goes to the island. He gets stuck there because he went by himself, and so he kind of gets stranded a little bit. So Ian goes with a team of people to try and rescue him, sort of. And his students, because he's a professor, find out that there's people trying to find him, and so then they sneak onto the trailer because they want to find out the professor. So there's just a couple of extra people there. Once again, it's not interesting, useful, or anything like that. So that's kind of the plot of the book. And then, like, as soon as the trailer attack happens, that happens, and then the tree house is under attack. There's the thing that's up in the lifted up that's in the movie a little bit. And then they go off to one of the different structures that are still there to try and get gas to be able to make it to a helicopter pad in time. But I mean, there's just not a lot of plot to it. It's not intriguing. It's not really interesting. That's even why I'm struggling a little bit to even describe it, because it's not like a bunch of memorable sequences. It's just they go there, they steal some eggs, and then it's like, let's get off the island, and it's just this one trailer sequence extended, really stretched out for a long time. So I can't really recommend the book, so take this cobbled together description I just gave of it and do what you want with it. Anyway, there's my take on Jurassic Park: The Lost World, both the book and the movie. Can't say I recommend either one of them. How about you? What are your thoughts on the movie? What are your thoughts on the book? Tell me down below in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion about it. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos. But the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies or the Jurassic Park books. I want to talk about them with you. So please join me down in the comment section. Be sure to come back next week as we talk about Jurassic Park 3 and have a nice lively discussion about that one. And as always, thank you for watching.